Our speaker today is a man of many talents. He began his studies at the High School of Music and Art in New York City, where he studied the clarinet. While a student, he was part of a musical group that played at dances, but he always found himself drawn to the arts, which were an integral part of that school. For his own pleasure, he would practice at home doing pastels and also experimenting with many different media. His career choice was to become a podiatrist, but his avid interest in art was always there. One day, a friend and neighbor introduced him to sculpting. He handed Cap a piece of stone. Cap studied it very carefully, and after some time, two embracing figures were released from that stone. To quote Michelangelo, every block of stone has a statue in it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it. Upon retirement, he continued sculpting and painting, finding great pleasure in his creative endeavors. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Cap Chapman.
And with that equipment, is she here?
I'm right here.
We need a technical assistant.
The wire came out.
No, we don't need that. This is your mic. Okay.
And this one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hi, sorry for the delay. At first, the first thing I would like to thank Tracy Warden. Tracy Warden.
Go close to the mic. Close to the mic.
Too close?
No.
Closer.
Yes. Perfect.
I would like to thank Tracy Warzer, Yoda Freza, and our concierge girls, Charlie and Corey, for the help in making this presentation possible. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at the end of the program. I think first I would just mention the media that I've used to produce whatever I produce. Pastels, acrylic, clay, Melaleuca bark, leather, pine wood, basswood, pink alabaster, white alabaster, marble, African wonderstone. That's what I've used more or less all these years, and they've worked pretty well for me. So I think we'll be starting now.
All right, lights are coming in. Lights?
Someone have the lights?
Get that?
Lights? Someone in charge of the lights?
Evidently having
Oh, there we go. Nice. And Dad, close to the mic when you talk.
Yeah. I'm waiting for the mic.
The mic's good.
Oh, he's,
Yeah, okay.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Right.
Can I point that in? No, how do I go back?
That's the first one.
On the upper right, you have the eagle.
Closer.
Probably more of the top. toughest work that I've ever done.
Larry,
Can you hear
get
me?
close.
Is that better?
Yeah.
The Eagle is one work I probably enjoyed the most. It was probably the most difficult for me to do. And it's pink alabaster. And if you think of it in terms of a piece of stone, that would be probably 150 pounds or so. There's a lot of work to be done to reach this point. And the scene underneath is the street in Israel. And I worked in various mediums, pastel, for one, anyway. The scene on the left is a fishing scene in Freeport, New York. And on the right is a building, as you can see, with a wheelbarrow. And pastels were used most of the time. I never was happy using oil.
Why?
I found it too messy. The beauty of the acrylic was that 5 minutes after you finished doing whatever you did, if you didn't like it, it's already dry. With oil, I found I had to wait till the next day to approach the work, to start to work. But that was just my strangeness.
Oh!
Barbara and Wendy, oldest and middle. And that's when I started in the Bronx, when I decided out of music and art high school that the work that I enjoyed looking at was the work done by my classmates who were studying art. And so I started to do it at every opportunity that I could.
The charcoal?
In charcoal, right. And,
This is true.
They're right here.
I took every advantage I could of what was doing around me. And the golf course, which I walked because I was so terrible, I would always look for flotsam and jetsam anywhere I could. And that is what you're looking at there. It was a piece of wood that had deteriorated to that point, looked interesting. And I just wired a tree into it. And it proved to be satisfying to me. And I always took advantage of things like that. This is a scene in Spain, castle. And again, I was asked before, why did you use oil? Because if I was unhappy with anything there, I would have to wait a day or so to get back to it so I can attack what I found to be wrong. With acrylic, I had a deep color, satisfying color, and I could change in minutes. And that was my feeling about acrylic. And so watercolor was the other option, but I really...
Don't the turn. Next. Next.
This was probably my first adventure with wood, and it's basswood, and the piece stands no more than about 6 inches tall, but I found it very satisfying. Working in wood
Next.
was enjoyable
Next.
for me.
Next.
I never met this guy, I really don't know. I know I did it, but I think it was a baby lion, I'm not sure. I constructed things whenever I had a chance to do it, and what you're looking at on the left, flowers, all made cut from leather. And the vessel holding it is from a soda bottle. cut the match, and painting the leather produced a bouquet, which I thought was pretty nice. And the house on the right was a house I photographed first in Maine and decided to do a painting of it.
Next.
On the left, street in Paris, and it just somehow attracted me, and that's the result. And on the right, a street in Marseille. This was during the period when we did some European travel.
Marseille.
Marseille.
Next.
I guess you can figure out what this is.
Tell us.
And it was just something that I don't remember whether I took this photograph first or took it out of a book of some kind. But I just wanted to see what I could do with fire, and it worked out pretty well.
Amish country.
Amish.
The Amish country.
Amish.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah.
right, Amish, there's an Amish farm, Pennsylvania, and I very often, I took many photos, I think. Sometimes thousands of photos, right,
Yeah.
over the years. And I
Next.
used those to help me find subjects that intrigued me, and the Amish did. The fisherman on the left, I was taken in the Bahamas, and that too is not watercolor again, it's acrylic, as is the one on the right, that's floral. Obviously a bouquet, again, paint, as is the picture on the right, and that's a street in Israel. And I always like the thinking of depth, to see depth, and street always did it quite well for me.
Next. Okay. That again and again.
Some changes were made in this, as you may see. In fact, I don't even know which one I did first. I didn't like the shadowing, and so I altered it and kept the photograph. But that also Israel. This was a joy for me to do. It started off with a clay boat. And then I constructed around it. So the boat is there, the killie box, the fisherman, rowing, a line, and so forth. And it just satisfied me as like a total picture.
What's it made of?
What's it made of?
Clay,
Clay and wood and
yeah,
everything.
it's
Metal.
clay wood.
Actually,
Anchor.
that's a small model,
Yes. It's about
Explain what
10
it is,
inches
Dad.
long.
Explain.
How
Explain what it
big
is.
Miniature.
It's not
It's
a
about
painting.
10 inches long, right?
Show with your
10
hands, Dad.
inches.
No, the boat itself was probably, I would say 8 to 10 inches long.
Next.
I looked for every opportunity to try something new. And for a while, this was pretty popular around. I don't know, many of you may have tried it yourself, goose eggs. So I would cut the top off, and there were all kinds of decorative items that they would sell to you to make like the little pearls around the periphery and the bases and so forth. And the one on the left, I was able to put a music box into. So after opening it like that, you would just reach in, press down, it would start the music box off. And it was
Microphone down.
Dad, Mike.
microphone. Gotcha. Now, the one on the left was the very first thing that I attempted. And that was given to me by a neighbor who was into art in a big way himself. And one day he said, come over, I've got some, I'm starting a class, and I'll give you an opportunity, maybe you want to try to do something in an art way. And he gave me this stone, and that was the first object in stone that I ever tried. And I was enchanted. And from that point on, I always looked for subject matter. And happily, I was always able to achieve it. I'm sure you recognize the baby on the right. It wasn't any of you that I could.
No. Next.
This is the stone that I most liked. And
White
it has
alabaster.
white alabaster, and as is the penguin. It ran true and runs true. It's easy to work on. And by the way, it's not marble, which I found the most difficult. I did only one piece in marble my entire life. And that was a piece that a patient gave to me saying that her granddaughter gave up on it. You want to give it a try. I worked on it for about a month or so. I achieved nothing at all. I got nowhere. So I put it out in the backyard where it's still sitting in Oceanside. Nobody wants to look at it. Nothing. And as you can see, it's got a beautiful, that is a penguin, right?
Yes.
I'm glad you helped me here.
And a vase.
And the vase, right?
Next. And my favorite. Yeah.
Barbara, this is the one you have?
Yes.
Yeah.
Get closer.
Microphone,
Closer
microphone.
to the mic.
Okay.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear. Talk into the mic, Dad.
Into the mic.
Okay.
Dad, lean into it. Lean into it.
And again, this is quite a large piece, white alabaster. And if you think in terms of what the stone had to look like and the size of
Just
it.
do it for him.
Okay, okay. White alabaster. And I enjoyed it. Made a terrific mess, but it ran true. And by that I mean it would not split off. It would just stay as meant to be. Any questions about it? No.
How big is the one on the left?
On the right,
The left.
on the one on the left, I would say roughly about 14, 15 inches, something like that.
And the hands
Top to
about the
bottom.
size of the
Put
hand.
your check in the hands.
You-
Yes, yeah.
Next. There she is again.
Beautiful ladies.
He doesn't say so himself. What's that?
It's a container holding plants.
One piece.
And sometimes I just started on a rock, a stone, whatever. And it suggested a way to go to me that I had never thought of to start with. And this turns out to be happily a bowl filled with plants.
Next.
I think you recognize this. That's black African wonderstone. And I built the bases as well, so all of it was enjoyable for me. Barbara, I think that's you. right?
No, Lizzie.
Lizzie.
Your granddaughter.
Lizzie,
Yeah.
my granddaughter. How
Next.
old was she at that time?
A year.
A year.
A year. There's a trout with a lure in its mouth. Now, I guess that would be like number one, to me anyway. The eagle. If you could just imagine the stone it was cut from. The stone must have been at least 150 pounds. And I was constantly in fear that a piece would split off and I would be finished with that. But it lasted, it took me quite a while to do. And I think it's one of my proudest works, I think. I enjoy that the most.
Next.
Of all the fruits, I think Barbara has that too. Yes? Right.
Yes.
Stone.
Next.
Pretty horse.
Next.
African wonderstone. A very workable stone. And it runs true. And the head on the right, I think, was maybe the second or third piece I ever tried. And one of my happiest ones. As well as the buffalo.
Next.
That's the hand. Yeah.
The
Next.
hand. Used to be a quarter in that hand, right? There's that piece of marble, the one on the left. After working on it for at least a month, I could achieve no more than that, and I just gave up. And it's sitting out back right now at our former residence.
Next.
And I wonder at the skill of the Grecians and the Romans. Like every work that they did was in marble. And it escapes me why they never tried other materials.
Plastic.
At least that was my problem. I cannot tell you what the work on the left is made of. I know it's a stone of some kind, but I just can't remember the name of it. And then the lovely lady, alabaster. One of my favorites, African wonderstone.
You have it or I have
The
it?
tusks
In there, please.
are plastic toothpicks. The beard is fishing line. And one of my proudest one, I mean, I just love doing it, love the result. It's a great one.
I don't say so myself.
Part of one of the things I like to do, you may have heard of the Melaleuca tree. The Melaleuca tree is a tree down in Florida that I learned is valued because of its bark. And it sheds its bark once a year in January. And I would collect the bark and strip it down, thin it down, and put it, store it away with insecticide. And finally, when it was all clean and dry, I would be able to layer it and make things in depth like those two containers. And it would accept paint and everything else. It was just another way to express art.
Painting.
Paint. Those who are familiar with all the artists of all time would probably recognize this. I think I copied it.
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh, yeah. That was a copy many years ago.
Next.
the two recognize it? Recognize it?
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh. And this is one of the constructions that I was talking about with the Melaleuca tree. And by layering it that way, it achieved a three-dimensional effect. And it was produced a piece like this, which I enjoyed making.
Next.
That was balsa wood I just played around with out in Florida. And you can recognize the blue heron.
Next.
The one on the left is a bas-relief, a block of wood, generally basswood, and the dancer on the left also, on the right rather, also basswood. As is this. And this. That was a piece in work and completion. You may have figured out that I love the ladies.
What did you want to go back? Go back to the ballerina?
What was the ballerina made of?
Wood, basswood?
Let's see if I can do this.
Yes.
There she is.
Yeah, that's a block of basswood. And the beauty of basswood is that it runs true. That is, you're not going to suddenly come across
A knot.
a car or something that would ruin the piece. It ran true. Pardon me? One piece of basswood here. And they,
Is it a softwood?
pardon me?
Yes, it's a soft wood. Right? It's a soft wood.
Bass-
It's a
bass-
soft wood.
Softwood, right.
Clay.
Runs true, it's not like balsa though. And I always had leather on hand because of working podiatry, for corrections, for the patients. I always have store of that. And so, starting off with basswood, that's the elephant, and then of course constructing the tusk and so forth.
What do you paint it with?
Pardon me?
What did you paint it with?
The painting were water-based paints. I did not use oil-based paints, it's all water-based paints. And I think that giraffe was one of the first wood pieces that I did. Not doing very much, but still, it was enjoyable. And that was the workroom. And that was my joy. I could lose myself in there for hours. Turn on some classical music. Have all my tools available, electrical, otherwise saws or what have you. And that was my home. That's a bas-relief, again, on basswood. Huh?
It's okay, next.
How do you spell that, wood?
B-A-S-S.
Okay. Was it related to, balsa wood? A
Well,
softer wood?
balsa would be a lot lighter.
Uh-huh.
Basswood is firmer, and you can get a better effect with it. The other wood would be too soft and would not retain whatever shape you wanted to give it as well. see if I can remember what material that was. To tell you the truth, I don't.
It's okay.
That answers your question.
Wood, right?
This was basswood again. And these two adorable chickadee.
One piece.
Pardon
One
me?
piece.
One piece.
It's made of
Yeah,
one piece.
It's one piece of basswood. And the Indian on the left was a construction. I did down in Florida. Had some leather to it and so forth. Again, one piece of softwood. I think we're approaching the end. This is a bas relief. Started off with one slab of wood and just chipped away at it until the flowers came out, so to speak. And you get a feeling of depth, which was always an achievement you ought to reach.
Next. What animal is that?
I think a deer. I
No.
gave up on it pretty soon. The one on the left was just something that evolved while working on it. It was not my goal to make exactly that. I just achieved it after a while. And finally said, stop, you have done enough. And I did. Mother and child, chimpanzee. I think that may have been one of my first wood attempts.
Baboon, no? Baboon?
Not basswood, but I don't remember which wood exactly. I can't remember.
Yep, you saw that?
My little friends, my favorite birds, chickadees. I have two of them. There's one, and somewhere the other one will arrive.
Next.
Again, basswood. I've heard you say that a
That's
lot
stone.
because,
That's stone. That's alabaster.
Alabaster.
what?
That's alabaster.
Oh, you're right, baby. I stand corrected, thank you.
Next. Alabaster.
Yep, white alabaster. And swan. And the base as well. And it's on a turntable. And it was a lot of fun to make.
Next.
I don't remember what material I used for this. I have no idea.
Next. Okay.
I think
One
we're-
of
I
my
think we're done.
favorites.
I think we've seen this. Keep going, Dad. Might be at the
I
end.
saw that before.
Yes.
Yeah. Keep going.
Oh,
There are the two birds.
Each one of those was one piece of basswood, and it all evolved from that one piece.
Next. I think we're done.
Saw that one.
This
too.
was difficult. As you can imagine, one piece of stone. I kept chipping away at it. I just hoped that more and more would evolve. And ultimately, it turned out to be a container
Next.
with flowers and leaves.
Next.
And effective.
Next.
No, it's one more, that one. My favorite one.
You recognize it? We're a family of dog lovers, and only one breed exists for us. That's the poodle.
Yay.
And I think it was Wendy, you got the
Five.
Yeah.
box,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I made this, I did it all
In 5
in
minutes.
one day. And that's one, and full-size dog. We are poodle lovers.
Next.
Perhaps you may have some questions. Perhaps you may have some questions before we end. Does anyone have a question they would like to ask?
When are you going home?
What is the question?
You have so many beautiful pieces.
Why don't I?
Here I know you don't have room for them. I know your family must have many of
What do
your
you want?
pieces. But did you ever sell any of them?
Did you ever sell it?
Not one.
No.
I could not. It's like family.
Bring
I
close,
mean,
Dad.
that's all that counts for me. Yes.
All right, yes. Did you ever work in medicine?
Gorgeous.
Wendy.
No, never.
Evie, can I? No,
No, no medal.
not metal.
Someone else had a hand, yes.
Did you ever exhibit any of your work?
Did you ever exhibit any of
The
your work?
library.
Yes.
Yes.
I've had showings in Oceanside, Rockford Center, and several showings.
Florida.
In each area. Right,
Florida.
and it was not much though. Just
What's your educational background in this? Are you
Public
self-taught?
What do you say? Public school.
the thing that changed my life would be music and art high school. That was, if that's what you're referring to. And there was the art group and the music group. I was part of the music group, musician. But those that I admire the most are the ones that were creating in the art world. And so that turned me towards art after I graduated. And that was of great importance to me. What?
You're great.
You're great.
That's a daughter talking.
It's true. We have one more question
Yes,
back
dear.
there. Can't hear.
How do you finish the marble?
With difficulty.
Polish. You polish?
The marble, well,
You have to seal them.
you get it down, chip, hammer, chip, chisel. You get it down to a certain point, sandpaper, or sand, rest, and so forth. All different. And it could be motorized, it could be power equipment. I generally didn't like to work. I generally like to work better with my hands, do everything with my hands.
But then it doesn't get polished in some way?
Oh, polishing at the end you do that, right.
I think that's what you meant.
That was,
Well, if there are no other questions,
I
thank you.
thank you so much for this.
You're tense. You're tense like this was your kid.